But here we got what is the president of El Salvador and Trump, they holding a meeting. And in this meeting, they were talking about my mans who got deported, because I heard this on the radio. I want to say maybe like 2 days ago. And they were talking about how a man got deported to El Salvador and he was wrongly deported and they not trying to bring him back, and he a US citizen and all like that. But they actually like deep dive into that. So that's what we about to get into. Make sure y'all like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell.
To help return the man who your administration says was mistakenly deported. The man who was mistakenly deported to El Salvador?
Well, let me ask Pam, would you answer that question?
Sure, President. First and foremost, he was illegally in our country. He had been illegally in our country. And in 2019, two courts, an immigration court and an appellate immigration court, ruled that he was a member of MS-13 and he was illegally in our country. Right now, it was additional paperwork had needed to be done. That's up to El Salvador if they want to return him. That's not up to us. The Supreme Court ruled, President, that if, as El Salvador wants to return him, this is international matters, foreign affairs, if they wanted to return him, we would facilitate it, meaning provide a plane.
So will you return him, President?
And you are doing a great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Stephen Miller, wait a minute. Can you just also respond to that question? Because, it's asked by CNN, and they always ask it with a slant, because they're totally slanted because they don't know what's happening. That's why nobody's watching them. But would you answer that question also, please?
Yes, gladly. So, as Pam...
Hey, listen, real quick. One thing Trump gonna always do, he gonna always throw shade. And it is so funny to see that, because he don't care. He be like, bro, don't like watch them. They lame as hell. And I just be like, bro, like he has no filter. It's funny.
Mentioned there's an illegal alien from El Salvador. So with respect to you, he's a citizen of El Salvador. So it's very arrogant even for American media to suggest that we would even tell El Salvador how to handle their own citizens as a starting point. As two immigration courts found that he was a member of MS-13. When President Trump declared MS-13 to be a foreign terrorist organization, that meant that he was no longer eligible under federal law, which I'm sure you know, you're very familiar with the INA, that he was no longer eligible for any form of immigration relief in the United States. So he had a deportation order that was valid, which meant that under our law, he's not even allowed to be present in the United States and had to be returned because of the foreign terrorist designation. This issue was then, by a district court judge, completely inverted, and a district court judge tried to tell the administration that they had to kidnap a citizen of El Salvador and fly him back here. That issue was raised to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said the district court order was unlawful, and its main components were reversed 9-0 unanimously, stating clearly that neither Secretary of State nor the President could be compelled by anybody to forcibly retrieve a citizen of El Salvador from El Salvador, who again is a member of MS-13, which, as I'm sure you understand, rapes little girls, murders women, murders children, is engaged in the most barbaric activities in the world, and I can promise you, if he was your neighbor, you would move right away.
So you don't plan to ask for anyone to get him back?
And what was the ruling in the Supreme Court, Steve? Was it 9-0?
Yes, it was a 9-0.
In our favor?
In our favor, against the district court ruling, saying that no district court has the power to compel the foreign policy function of the United States. As Pam said, the ruling solely stated that if this individual, at El Salvador's sole discretion, was sent back to our country, that we could deport him a second time.
Well,
no version of this legally ends up with him ever living here, because he is a citizen of El Salvador. That is the president of El Salvador. Your questions about it, per the court, can only be directed to him.
I asked President
Bukele.
Can President Bukele weigh in on this? Do you plan to return him?
Well, I'm supposed to be suggesting that I smuggle a terrorist into the United States, right?
It's always
how can I smuggle? How can I return him to the United States? Like, I smuggle him into the United States, or what do I do? Of course, I'm not going to do it. It's like, the question is preposterous. How can I smuggle a terrorist into the United States? I don't have the power to return him to the United States.
So you can release him inside El Salvador?
Yeah, but I'm not releasing. I mean, we're not very fond of releasing terrorists into our country. I mean, we just turned the murder capital of the world into the safest country of the Western Hemisphere, and you want us to go back into releasing criminals so we can go back to being the murder capital of the world. No, that's not going to happen.
They'd love to have a criminal, released into
I mean, there's a fascination.
They would love it. They're sick. These are sick people. Marco, do you have something to say about that?
Yeah, I mean, Stephen Island, I don't understand what the confusion is. This individual is a citizen of El Salvador. He was illegally in the United States and was returned to his country. That's where you deport people, back to their country of origin. Except for Venezuela, that wasn't refusing to take people back, or places like that. I can tell you this, Mr. President. No, the foreign policy of the United States is conducted by the President of the United States, not by a court. And no court in the United States has a right to conduct the foreign policy of the United States. It's that simple. End of story.
And that's what the Supreme Court held, by the way, to Marco's point. The Supreme Court said exactly what Marco said, that no court has the authority to compel the foreign policy function of the United States. We won a case 9-0, and people like CNN are portraying it as a loss, as usual, because they want foreign terrorists in the country who kidnap women and children. But President Trump, his policy is foreign terrorists that are here illegally get expelled from the country, which, by the way, is a 90-10 issue.
Well, Mr. President, you said that if the Supreme Court said someone needed to be returned, that you would abide by that. You said that on Air Force One just a few days ago, and they said that it must be facilitated.
Why don't you just say, isn't it wonderful that we're keeping criminals out of our country? Why can't you just say that? Why do you go over and over? And that's why nobody watches you anymore. You have no credibility. Please go ahead.
President Trump, thank you so much. How many illegal criminals are you planning on exporting to El Salvador? And President Bukele, how many are you willing to take from the U.S.?
As many as possible. And I just asked the president, it's this massive complex that he built, jail complex. I said, can you build some more of them, please? As many as we can get out of our country that we're allowed in here by.
Hey, listen, some of these questions I honestly believe be bait questions, because he said, she said, how many do you plan on exporting? And then she asked the other president, how many will you accept? And then Trump, basically, it's one of those things where it's like, you kind of let your nuts hang in a sense, because he kind of like, as many as possible. Basically, like, we're going to get all of them out and send them back to where they came from. It's kind of like, what was the other president supposed to say? Like, oh no, we only going to take probably like 25%. I guarantee Trump would be like, what? You won't take all of them because they came from you. What you talking about? So some of them questions be like bait questions to me. But yeah, like that whole situation is crazy. And now hear me out, guys. One thing that I really be thinking sometimes, and I understand, like, you got conspiracy theorists and everything on, that they talk about, and people like, oh, that's just conspiracy and stuff like that. But I really be sitting back and thinking, like, damn, bro, is it some people really that just like hate our country? Like, I understand the history of the country. Listen, I get all of that, but it's like, we can't necessarily like live in the past, because it's like, it really does us no justice. Like, the past happened. Like, it's nothing we can do about it. The only thing that we can do is be here in the present and create plans for ourselves and then execute it for the future. That's the only way we're gonna make things change. But here, it's like, when they talk about like all the illegal immigrants that was like doing things illegally and stuff like that, it's like, why do certain news outlets, why do they paint such a negative picture of like what's going on? And it's like, sometimes they'll take one small piece of information to paint this whole narrative where it's just like, oh my God, he's just a monster and he just effing everything up. And I was just like, damn, bro, like, so what do you want them to do? Like, you don't want these people out if they committing crimes? Like, honestly, this was just one of my thoughts. The people, like, even our own citizens, the ones that create, like, I mean, not create, but do like heinous crimes like murder and stuff like that, and like they got them dead to rights, they got the evidence like legit. I be thinking, like, instead of putting them in prison, why don't you send them to like a island? You know what I'm saying? Like, just get them, like, exile them. You know what I'm saying? Like, you remember like in the medieval days when people get exiled and they can never come back to the civilization? It's like, why don't we do that? Like, do y'all think that that's what's the word I'm looking for? I'm not gonna say heinous, but do y'all think that would be cruel to send, like, the R word apis to their own island, to where they just got to live amongst each other and It's like that's where you live out your days at. You can never get back over here type situation. That's just a thought. Let me know what y'all think about that. We got a comment. I don't think that they should bring him back. I'm just mad that they found out that he was a gang member and illegal in 2019. Why in the world did they let him stay here until now? See, that's a good question. That's the same thing that I be asking. Like, why do these people be like? Why are they here? That's one. But then two, why are people advocating for them? Now I understand, the media they play, different roles, but my thing is this, because like my man who was up there arguing his point, basically saying like, the courts can only do a certain amount of things, that Trump has the power to do whatever. The way he was like articulating and arguing, bro, I do the same thing. I kid you not. I'd be pointing point by point by point by point. Like, how are you going to argue these when these laws or these regulations are in place and it's like you can't override them? But when I first got word of the story, it was by it was on radio station 1075 in Detroit, and it was L'Oreal. I'm not gonna hold you up. I cannot stand L'Oreal, bro. I cannot stand that woman on the radio. Like, I don't even listen to that station because of her, because she be talking about some of the dumbest shit. Her points be so stupid. I just be like, oh my God. But anyway, she was talking about the story and she painted the narrative basically like, uh, he got deported and America is not trying to get him back and he's our citizen and all like that. But then my man's basically like, nah, he was illegally here. He wasn't supposed to be here. It be messed up situations, but at the end of the day, I can't do nothing about it. So I'm not about to be sitting here, trying to rah for a mofo that I don't even know. Some people like, well, what if that happened to you? I mean, I'd be like, shit. I'm glad I'm black as hell, and it's kind of like I was born and raised in Detroit, and you can't mix me up with nobody. I mean, because I don't know. That's why my thing is I stay out the way and I do my own thing. I'm not getting mixed up in nothing because I ain't got time for none of that. None of that. So y'all already know, man. We got to move along, which is all good. We got to get up out of here with that one.